Hello, I'm Kata Vikuk and welcome to the Walk the Valley, the podcast that breaks down the barriers to bringing healthcare innovation to market. In today's episode, we're joined by Kush Punyani, founder of Spermosense, a company revolutionizing male fertility solutions, and CEO of Nested Bio, a challenge-driven deep tech venture studio. We'll dive into the unique challenges he faces as he navigates the complex world of healthcare, from the struggle to secure funding to balancing product development and commercialization. Let's go for a walk in the valley. Hi Kush, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me and talk about your work and how you navigate the startup ecosystem. First of all, I'd like to ask you to tell us what are you currently working on in the healthcare innovation space, and how did you get involved in the fertility market?
Okay, long question. I think the two are very far separated temporally. Today, I'm working as a business coach at Smile Venture Hub, Smile Incubator, based here in Lund. So I work with a few different startups within healthcare primarily, guiding them and helping them to how should they get to market. My journey within infertility started when I was a university undergrad. It started off by an internship that I never really was targeting, but it was a welcome chance that happened. Serendipity, if that's the right word. And from there, it all started. I got an idea. I moved to Sweden. I was doing my PhD. And at that point, I had this itch that I wanted to work on that project and ended up starting my own first startup, Spermosense. The premise essentially was that male infertility is not really looked into as much when it comes to healthcare or research in both the cases. There was this new biomarker that had recently been discovered, and I saw potential in it for diagnostics, and that's how I ended up going in that space. That was in 2017 when this started off within the startup ecosystem here in Lund. And fast forward, now I work as a venture builder.
Venture builder. So you must have a very good insight into the problems ventures face when you get into the valley of death. But let's get back to that part a bit later. I would like to explore a little bit the situation on the fertility market. It's such a crucial area, and a lot of couples suffer from involuntary childlessness. But it still seems like there's a real disparity in funding, especially when it comes to male health. You mentioned that Spermosense is focusing on male fertility issues, and in my experience, women are more targeted with treatments and diagnostic tools and interventions in this space. So how do you see the big picture when it comes to investment in infertility? Do you feel like male infertility is still lagging behind?
I don't think we've seen so much investment cases within the space. It is increasing, of course, and I completely hear what you're saying. And I share your opinion that there has been a lot of focus on the female side when it comes to infertility. Of course, there's a lot of sociological reasons on that. Maybe it's not scientifically justified. It definitely is not. The responsibility of infertility lies within both parties, and we know that scientifically it's 50-50. Today, yes, the research is definitely lacking. There are less number of startups that I know of within the space for male infertility. An investment scenario as a result is similarly affected as well. There is less cases, less deal flow. We do see a lot of companies within male infertility these days that are focusing on automated semen analysis, which is pretty much automating a process that has been done pretty much the same way, but manual over the last several decades. And that market space is getting quite crowded. So I think we're all keenly waiting for the next big idea within male infertility as well. I should also say we are seeing a few new pharma products coming out, contraception as well. There has been interest, but nothing new that I know of in the last 3 to 4 years. But it's definitely a space that I'm hopeful is going to develop in coming years.
And would you share your ideas? What do you think could be, or where could we find the next big thing for male fertility?
I think it is going to come out of university hospitals and university research groups. If I knew, I would go and invest in them myself. However, I think given the paradigm, it's a new field in its own right. There's very little known the new biomarkers and pathways that are being discovered and reformulations that are happening as well, repurposing of drugs. I think it's pretty interesting. So I think we just have to wait and see. But my bet would be on university research groups rather than engineers.
Interesting. I'm working in the innovation space as well. And my experience is that healthcare innovation, particularly coming from university hospitals and academia, hits this stage where the innovation gets stuck in being fully developed, even CE marked with market authorization, but the clinics are not taking it up at a pace that it could survive. And when we talked before, you mentioned that you think there are several valleys of death. Can you explain what you meant by that?
Yeah, of course. Let's start by what you touched upon, companies managing to get the products to CE marks, but not really getting market penetration. So there is market access, but poor market penetration. I think it has a lot to do with different skill sets and talents that are required to get to both of those levels. There are active partners like where I'm working today at Smile Venture Hub, as well as my previous venture studio that I was running myself, Nested Bio. Actors like us are exactly trying to do that to help companies not just get their market access, but also deal with market penetration. And it does have to deal with having the right competences in the team. Sometimes the founders have it, sometimes they don't. And then that is the time to pass on the baton. So the more we understand this, the better we are going to be able to pass through these valleys of death. And to answer your questions on valleys of death, I don't think there's one or two or three. Everyone who's run a startup knows that there's plenty of valleys of death that you encounter on a weekly basis, if not a daily basis. Of course, we know of these funding cycles. We also know how a startup has to get through into for market access. How are they are going to get market CE marks. Not an easy process, of course. You've already talked about market penetration. That is yet another one. But it doesn't really stop there. We are talking about getting enough market so you can also enter profitability. A lot of startups forget to think about a sustainable business model that can actually drive them towards profitability. So we do have to think beyond venture funding and beyond risk capital and beyond debt capital. Operations are necessary to be thought about. And then we're talking about a sustainable business model. And I think the skill sets that are required are very different. So a diverse team can really help with that. But we also need to think of strategic recruitments from an early point on. Having advisors close by, it could as well be VCs, comes with their own pros and cons. But having those advisors can really help prepare the startups to not fall into one of these traps.
So just to recap, so you're saying that it's not enough to reach the point where you're market ready. You also need diverse skill set in your team to help you achieve market penetration. And we need to move away from relying on risk capital and start developing sustainable, financially sustainable business models to reach profitability. That's how a startup can stay on the market.
So I really do think so. This fast route to be sustainable, it doesn't really exist. And getting into an acquisition today, especially within the medical device industry, doesn't look the same way it used to look a decade ago. So companies do need to show that there is traction, and the traction today is pretty much market penetration. You have to start that journey. Being in a very homogeneous market or a small market like Sweden is not enough to get acquired. And we see that more and more. So how do you scale from that? And that scaling is necessary. And when you are on that scaling journey, I think making money is critical. That is the whole point. We do this. That is to make money. Yes, we are here to launch products that can help have improved and better healthcare. At the same time, if profitability is not brought into the equation, the business model is not sustainable. And today, if a large corp is going to acquire a smaller organization, they don't want to just see the product is cool, the product is good for them. They want to see that the customers actually want the product. And that's where we are getting towards a profitable business model.
I think you managed to nail it because at some point, innovators, entrepreneurs think that their product is ready and investors and customers will want to pick it up. But at the same time, investors and the industry is only ready to invest and pick it up when it's a bit further developed and already tested with customers. This gap, in my mind, represents the one valley of death that I see repeatedly in failing startups or struggling companies. And how has this affected you as an entrepreneur?
I am looking forward to meet some of these valleys of deaths, and hopefully I can cross them. I haven't had the whole journey yet, so I'm on my journey. It's a very exciting journey. Get to learn a lot. But surrounding yourselves by people who've been on the journey before and are knowledgeable, not just from a venture aspect, but how to run medical device businesses. I think that's the way to go forward. That has been the reason that we've come so far in my companies as well, with the challenges that we've faced as well.
So when you look at the big picture of investment in infertility, what trends do you see?
We are seeing a lot of medical devices. We are also seeing some very recent pharma ventures coming out within infertility. However, if I talk about medical devices, which is a more lucrative market for a lot of first-time entrepreneurs, we're seeing several B2C or D2C business models rather than B2B, which is something that healthcare usually asks for. So that is definitely a very strong trend we are seeing within the medical device space.
Okay, so you're seeing that a lot of companies are going for the B2C models. Why do you think that is?
It's an easier market access, or at least a perceived easier market access. It's easier to get to customers because you can start selling the product sooner. You don't have to deal with the healthcare, but that is what one is hoping for. And so D2C has been quite lucrative. At the same time, it does end up becoming quite geographically limited, these business models, once they are materialized. Having the backing of the healthcare in different national environments can give a boost that D2C quite often lacks. At the same time, it does garner a lot of traction in early stages, even with the customers. So that's why I think it's been quite lucrative for some founders to go towards the D2C market, even when these products would be required in a B2B setting.
In order to sell to the healthcare and have a B2G business model or B2B business model, when it comes to bringing a product to the market, studies and clinical trials can be incredibly expensive and time consuming. What makes the studies so time consuming, and how do you manage that as a startup? Can this process be sped up, you think?
I would look at it differently. The reason clinical trials exist, it's a hoop to jump through because the healthcare needs that hoop. Healthcare needs to be conservative. I'm not arguing it needs to be as conservative as it is today and as it is everywhere, but some of these checkpoints need to exist, and that's why clinical trials are a requirement as well. And clinical trials, I would see them as two different sets of clinical trials. One would be for market access for CE marks. I think that's what most startups are thinking about at early stages. But then there's also clinical trials for marketing purposes. Consumers are getting more and more educated and knowledgeable about what they are using. So even when it could be a private individual who's a stakeholder, even when you're selling it to in a B2G market. So clinical trials are becoming more and more important. Can we speed them up? I think it's a very case-dependent question. Smart trial design is, of course, you need to look at it from that perspective. The question should really be, can we answer the needs that this product has in order to get market access or in order to get buy-in from whatever stakeholders are out there with a slim design? And we are seeing some of these also coming now. Better statistical methods being used. These days, we are also seeing less and less controls being used in these trials. Not having blinded trials is another thing. Traditionally, we've always wanted blinded trials, and we are moving away from that. Not at a very quick speed, still slow, conservative. But the whole point of healthcare is to help patients. It's also to minimize the risk that comes with treatments and new technologies. I don't think we're going to see a massive shift in how this process is run.
Now, going back to Spermosense and the product you developed with it, you said that it was designed to fit seamlessly into existing healthcare workflows, and instead of disrupting the healthcare system, it's designed to enhance the care. without disrupting it. Was this a deliberate strategy from the start, or did it evolve naturally? Do you
I
think this approach will make it easier to adopt your product?
I hope so, because we're on that journey right now. The question really is the strategy that we started with. Of course, it evolved over time. But this thing has always been consistent that we designed it for the healthcare system and we had that in mind. We engaged customers early on, even for a B2B or a B2G business model for a device that was going to be used in clinics and laboratories at the hospitals. And I do think it adds a lot of value. Firstly, we did get a lot of confidence early on from our potential customers. They could see prototypes right in front of them. They could give feedback on the number of steps that are required to handle this product. What is difficult, what is easy. I remember a simple thing. We wanted to make a very, very small device so that it doesn't take much bench space. And I was given the input, no, the device needs to have its own space on the bench, or otherwise we will forget it in a drawer. You don't think about these things as a first-time founder or an engineer. Healthcare has its needs, and it's important to understand those needs. And when we look at the process of doing medical device development under ISO 13485 or following how a CE mark is expected to be filed, there are all these steps where you're supposed to think of this is what my customer needs. This is what my user needs. This is what the vision of the company is. How do we put all of that together in the product format? I think there's a lot of value in doing it, and the regulatory agencies require that as well. So it's better to start early on and not make mistakes for a product format that will not at the end be usable or your customers don't like. I
Okay.
can also add another point that you just touched upon right now, disrupting the healthcare. I think it's something that all startups want to do. It's a lot about disruptive innovation. I see it a little bit differently. When it comes to healthcare, we are trying to empower healthcare, not disrupt it. So while we might all mean the same thing, I do like to move away from disruptive innovations for healthcare. We want to build healthcare to be better. I don't think we're looking for disruptions.
Thank you for pointing this out. I agree with you very much. As we wrap up, do you have any final thoughts or advice for others trying to navigate the complex world of healthcare innovation?
Surround yourself by people who are the stakeholders that this product is for. And the product is not just for the users within healthcare or just for the management that is going to take the decision or just for the nurses. You also have to consider the demands of your investors if you're going for risk capital. You also do have to think about production at an early point. Can you manufacture this device at a reasonable cost? These are the kind of questions I like to speak to my startups, even at early stages. Of course, it's difficult to have answers for all of them, but once you start thinking about them, I think the process becomes a lot more cohesive and synergistic.
When you start a company in healthcare, you try to scale up. Is it a natural step to be acquired by a larger company, or is it something you need to compromise on to be acquired instead of building yourself?
This is the kind of questions I'm having with my companies at Smile as well, thinking about acquisitions at a very early stage, because quite a lot of times I see founders, including me when I was a first-time founder, wanted to develop the company, run the company, and launch the product myself and keep selling. There was no question of acquisition. It was really about, oh, this is going to be a real business. But I think the compromise really kicks in as soon as you decide to take in investments and you haven't had that dialogue with your investors. Yeah, I think you could spend 2 hours just discussing this in a panel with different thoughts. At Mink, I think we have a lot of founders that would like to just aim for acquisition at an early stage. We do see that here at Smile as well. I think that they're, depending on your business model, we see these within life science, these hybrid companies that are also doing CRO activities besides product development. And I don't think you necessarily need to aim for acquisitions because you're generating revenue and in terms of millions from the time you're founded or within a year of your first incorporation. You come out of university, you have your tech, you start using that knowledge to solve other people's problems. And that's the business of a CRO, but you focus yourself in a space so that you can also generate your develop your IP and develop your products in-house, and then you can capitalize on them. So these hybrid models, they are recent. And besides acquisitions, I think licensing and tech transfers. These are opportunities that are opening up as we are seeing more of these business models in Europe or in Sweden. US has all seen all of this before.
Thank you so much. This has been a very insightful conversation.
Thank you, Kata.
That's a wrap on today's episode of Walk the Valley. I hope you found our conversation with Kush insightful and thought-provoking. Be sure to subscribe for more stories about the tough but rewarding journeys through healthcare innovation. If you enjoyed this episode, leave us a review. It makes a big difference. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, keep walking the valley.